Okay, welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. My name is Mangg. We're playing a little Lies of P. Pretty much towards the start here. I got this when it came out, and I played a little bit of it. But, yeah, it didn't really click with me at all. And I think it was because I was trying to really dodge a lot. I was trying to play it like, like Elden Ring or something. When you're supposed to do a lot of blocking. So it's more of a Sekiro game, actually, which, yeah, I wouldn't have guessed. So, I'm still slowly working my way through Assassin's Creed. But, I thought I'd pick up something with a little bit more in-depth and trickier combat. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a lot of just infinite slaughter of enemies, without much risk. So that's that. Yeah. This week on this channel, we had solo role manging continuing indefinitely, of course, and I've been recording here and there a little bit more. And what else did we have? Well, we finished Monster Hunter Wilds. That's done with. And I started uploading some Dawn of War 3, which there's only like 3 videos on, so don't get too excited, because it's not a very good game. So that's what's going on there. And so after Dawn of War 3, probably just roll into my Dawn of War, like, Dark Crusade stuff. I did start recording Dark Deity, that sort of indie PC strategy RPG Fire Emblem clone, because Dark Deity 2 just came out. And so I finished Dark Deity 1, and I immediately went right into Dark Deity 2, and I am enjoying it quite a bit. So, soon that will also be uploaded. That's pretty much it. Not much else to say about this channel. Yeah. Over on the Exploring series. Over on the Exploring series, they put out Scopophobia. Another one of the Phobia anthology articles. It was pretty good. And then this week, I worked on the new DJ Cactus article. It's great to see him, back to writing. Said that the next one is going to be Archdemon Apollyon, which is pretty much the big finale of the Cactus verse. So I'm sure it's going to be utterly fucking massive. That'll be fun. And it's like, it's been a long time since the last one. I feel like I'm going to have to reread all of them to get it all back into my head. And I feel like I'm going to have to do kind of a big recap, sort of. You know, like a fucking TV show that has been on hiatus for like 4 years. You know? So... Actually, holy shit, this is exactly where I stopped playing last time because I didn't know where to go from here. Yeah, this is the exact spot. Huh. And I remember wandering around this section of the city multiple times. Huh. Very curious. This time I'll probably look it up, though, because I actually want to... Oh. Wait a minute. Did I never try this door? I don't think I ever tried that door. Man, I must have been really dumb a few years ago, but luckily that dumbness has gone away.
Come out, Geppetto!
I am smart now.
You got a lot to answer for. You know what caused the puppet frenzy, don't you? You're their maker, practically their father. You and the Alchemist. What's your problem? Wait, you're the devil. You can't sneak past me. Die!
Okay. Fuck.
I'll kill you both, then string you up on the bridge.
Yeah, I should be able to perfect guard that. Oh man, he's got some lead. I'll keep talking soon. I didn't expect to fight Mad Donkey.
I'll kill you both, then string you up on the bridge.
Boom.
I demanded the truth. Now I feel bad for my comrade.
So anyways, yeah, so DJ Cactus's new article is a very interesting one. It's similar to, I think, the No Vacancy article that Rounderhouse did a little while back. So if you like that sort of feeling where, you know, you're kind of getting thrown into an anomaly that has been studied extensively, and you kind of learn bits and pieces about it as you go. I think it's got a similar feeling to that.
Finally.
Although it's not quite as surreal and anomalous. Like it's I think it's much more understandable of like how all this fits together for the most part. There is kind of a central mystery to it as to like what caused all this anomaly to happen in the first place.
But in order for me to do, won't you help me?
And that doesn't really get answered at the end or anything.
Use the Stalker's key to we'll catch up.
But yeah, I liked it quite a lot. The thing is that the video ended up being an hour and 51 minutes. The script, I would have guessed when I finish the script, you know, I usually can guess how long the actual video is going to be based on that. I would have guessed it would have been over 2 hours. But I think that I ended up speaking faster than I normally speak because I didn't want it to be a 2-hour plus video. So we got it snuck in there under 2 hours. But yeah, it's a big boy. There's a lot going on.
So about that weapon assembly tool you were talking about, if you find any more?
I I don't think it's... I mean, it is complex just due to, like, you've got a lot of characters involved, it's lengthy, there's sort of a lot of moving pieces, but I didn't really find, like, the actual meat of the article, like, hard to understand, because there's not a lot of... There's no, like, redactions. There's not really many mysteries or anything. It's just kind of... I don't know how to describe it. I would just recommend watching the video or reading the article. Yeah. So yeah, it's a long one, but a good one. So that's all I can really say about it. I didn't really want to do one that was that long after doing all of fucking Black Atom. But sometimes these things are not up to me. So next week, I don't know. I haven't looked. Hopefully something shorter, but I don't know how it could not be shorter than an hour and 51 minutes. So that'll be good. I'm still waiting. There's one article that was a part of redacted SCPs until I decided it was kind of long enough to be its own video, and so it's mostly written, and I'm looking forward to when that gets picked on the polls, because then it'll be kind of a week off, mostly. But you can't always pick your vacations, right? Dodge in this game. Don't dodge. Just a losing proposition. That's that. That's all there's to say. And what the fuck? I don't remember that. Right. So we had an RPG session last night after a brief break, and they kind of forgot everything, so that's fun. It's astounding to me that 3 adults can't remember, you know, where they left off in the game 2 weeks ago, but I don't know. I've never struggled with that at all. To the point of I'm not saying like exactly where they left off, like the exact moment we stopped, but like an entire like hour or so of events from the last session. They just completely all blocked out of their mind. It's great. But anyways, where we left off is that they had,
No survivors here. What do we do? Just give her that baby puppet?
They had gone infiltrated the bandit encampment by this old watchtower, and they had successfully, thanks to their very sneaky new halfling friend, They had successfully snuck into the Watchtower's basement and rescued 2 prisoners that were being tortured. So they got them out of there. And I think their plan then was to just leave. Yes, haha, we're good. But you can't always just leave the dungeon or leave the environment whenever it's just like, oh no, we're kind of mildly hurt and inconvenienced. Let's get out of here. There's sometimes, There's sometimes some issues with that. And so they saw that there were more captives, like a bunch more captives in another building, you know? And the guy that they rescued, one of the guys they rescued, the captain of the militia, was like, you know, the leader here is he's gonna discover that we're missing, you know, soon. We've got to get those captives out of there before then. Because who knows, you know, what he'll do. Can summon an NPC to help. You know, I'm getting pretty old, so sure, why not? So I kind of forced them to either go rescue these people now or kind of forfeit maybe their lives or certainly some XP. Or some, I should have given them 1 XP just for agreeing to go help the captives, regardless of whether or not they're successful. But I ended up giving them a good amount of XP in the end, so it's not that big of a deal. And so they go and they sneak over to this building, and they're debating, you know, left and right about how to enter this building, their best approach. And so the rogue kind of cracks open the doorway and to look in, and it's a pretty small building. It's 1 room that has like a sunken. This is gonna be way too loud, I can already tell, but I can't lower the audio now. Glad I decided to do this during Hanging with Mangg while I'm trying to fucking fuck. Okay, so the NPC are way more powerful in this game. Like, he barely gets hurt. To be standing in that little red circle. Fuck you, no. Jesus. Yeah. And it's way too fucking loud. Anyways. So the rogue, he's not even a rogue. She's playing an artificer, but she's a halfling, so she's pretty sneaky. So she sneaks in, cracks open the door, but it's like, okay, it doesn't really matter how sneaky you are, to be honest, because if someone's looking at the door, they're gonna see the door open, like, especially opening a crack. It's one thing if you're trying to set like an ambush and you like push the door open from like the side so you're not invisible, and then they're like, what the fuck, you know, and the exclamation point appears above their head. But yeah, if someone's looking at the door, you're spotted. It has nothing to do with being stealthy. So it's not a stealth roll, it's just like a luck roll, as Shadow the Weird Wizard would have it. It's basically just like kind of a 50-50 odds. And so I told her to roll a luck. and she rolled like a 7. And in Shadow of the Weird Wizard, that would be basically a failure, you know, a negative kind of effect. But they all thought that I was asking her to roll under her luck. And then in that moment, because I was just thinking of Shadow of the Weird Wizard and its 50-50 luck rolls, I had completely forgotten that there is a luck stat in Tales of Argosa that you're trying to roll under. So they were all like, yeah, she succeeded. And I'm like, wait, what? In the end, I counted as a failure, but in hindsight, I wish I hadn't. Like, I do kind of want to stick with that as being just using the luck thing. My argument was like, that if I want to base luck rolls like that, like chance stuff, off of their luck stat, I can't really ever do a 50-50 kind of thing. But I don't know why that's important to me at all. Like, why not just base it on their luck, you know, and because that number dwindles and it sort of drives their desperation, and it's not just for like saving throws, because it's also for just like random chance things. They just get kind of unluckier and unluckier. It's not really realistic, I suppose, but it is kind of a fun mechanic, much like Dunderfall Classics luck. Fucking hell. Yeah. But it didn't matter much. I had someone spot the door opening, and she kind of was looking in, and so the room just has a big like sunken pit in the middle of it, and there's all these prisoners chained up, and there's a big beefy shirtless guy whipping them, covered in sweat. And then she kept looking around the room, and near the door there's another guy, and she sees him looking at her, and he's just standing there smiling at her. So the smiling guys are under this mind phage thing, so they are relatively mindless. So had it been a normal guy spotting her, I probably would have immediately called for assistance. But this was fucking hell. So it actually didn't end up being that bad, because he didn't alert anybody, and they decided, you know, they're not gonna fuck around and find out if he is gonna alert anyone. So they just kind of burst in at that point and bum rushed him. But they actually failed initiative, but it didn't matter that much. It was a pretty quick fight no matter what, because when you have enemies that have only 4 HP. It's not really going to be too much trouble. And this is meant to be like kind of one of the first locations they come across, but they're already level 2 in a system that makes characters a little beefier at early levels. So, yeah, the bandit camp, I mean, could very easily be a big problem if they just try to fight the whole thing at once. Obviously, this isn't Shadow of the Weird Wizard, but yeah, just picking off 1 or 2 at a time, like, yeah, it's gonna be pretty easy. The downside of that in Tales of Argosa is that does not count as a significant combat, so I don't really award much XP for that. In this fight, though, they failed initiative, and the smiling guy actually did just calmly walk up to Lego and stab him in the gut, So I count it as significant combat just
I
because
think we're done here, pal. Back to the hotel.
an attack roll against him was made, and they did take some damage, so I count it. It's the bare minimum. So they clean those two up, and then they have the issue of all these chained up villagers and peasants and stuff. And the key is on the leader of the bandit camp. It's not here, so they'd have to go find the leader, take the key from him, or kill him, or whatever, you know, something like that. Or find a way to get them out without using a key, which obviously is what they were more inclined to do. And the artificer has traps and locks. As a skill, but she never got thieves' tools, so she doesn't have any lockpicks. She went on this whole thing about how she's an artificer, you know, she can just whip up something and blah blah blah, and I'm like, you know, she kept going on, and I was like, okay, I mean, I'll allow you to maybe spend some time with your toolkit, because she has a toolkit, and you can make, you know, some sort of improvised lockpicks that are basically just going to last for this little scene, you know. She does have the troubleshooter ability, which lets her basically invent something to solve a problem. It's very vague, it's very open, it's very fun. I think it's one of the best abilities in the whole game as far as creativity is involved. And had she mentioned at any point that, hey, I have this troubleshooter ability that lets me just solve a problem, I'd be like, yes, excellent. You whip up some lockpicks. But she didn't. And, yeah, maybe that's me punishing her a little bit for not knowing her own abilities. I don't know. I know she has that written down on her sheet. We went over it. So, pretty much, yeah, like she took some time to make these improvised lockpicks, and then it took her more time to pick them all, you know, pick all the locks. And during all this time, obviously, I was rolling to see if any of the other bandits were going to go come check on their captives in the middle of the night, or, you know, have some playtime with them, who knows what. And so eventually, towards the end, a couple guys did start to wander over, and so they set up a little ambush for them. And it worked pretty well. I mean, Lego just kind of hid behind the door and bonked them both on the back of the head with his flail. So it didn't take too much. And that was not significant combat. And so they got all the prisoners out, and all was well. And they're all kind of like starved and beaten and at 1 HP and, you know, wearing rags. And then they had to figure out how to get them out of the camp, because the way they came up was on this sort of steep 10-foot embankment that they used a rope and a grappling hook to climb up. And Lego started asking some of the peasants if they can climb. And I'm like, you want them to evaluate their own climbing ability at this point in time. It wasn't to suggest that none of them could climb, although I would guarantee a few of them could not. But, yeah, I don't think that was their best plan, would be to just make them all climb down the rope, because a 10-foot fall is 1d6, and that is basically a guaranteed kill on all of them. So, it wouldn't have been the smartest thing to do, and they didn't do that. Instead, their plan was to have the fighter carry them down you know, like on her back, one by one, taking up a decent amount of time. It also was going to involve a strength roll for each of them. Now, a strength athletics roll, and she has athletics as a skill, which basically combined with her strength meant that she had a 85% chance of success on each one, and there were 9 of them, which means statistically she would fail at least one. But she also had a reroll available, where she could reroll any failure. So, statistically, I think it was decently likely that they all got down safe. Unfortunately, statistics don't always work in our favor, and 2 of them actually fell to their deaths. And basically, that pretty much just ticked down their final XP from 9 to 7. But, you know, had they come up with a safer plan, it might have worked out. And it was only a 10-foot embankment, and it was pretty steep, but it wasn't insanely steep. And maybe I was being a little too harsh on it, but I wanted to see them flex their creativity a little bit. And again, if the artificer just used troubleshooter to just say, like, hey, I make, like, a trampoline, or, like, a mattress, or, you know, some sort of cushion that they can fall on, it's like, okay, excellent, you solve it. Or I mean, I'm in a myriad of things that would help, that would just prevent any death and just make this, okay, you're done, awesome, you're great. It's like, yes, I would have even given her an XP for it. But no, nothing. And I will be talking to her about that, so hopefully that doesn't happen again in the future. But yeah, so then they get all the peasants out, and they are going to make the 2-day trek back to the big city. And so we have a little fun with, like, rations, because they got to give them food and water along the way, and they had to do some hunting, which worked out. And then my nephew, you know, he's trying to be sort of an apothecary, magic user, all that stuff, so he starts foraging for ingredients, and I had to kind of tell them, like, you know, there is a risk involved when you go off on your own in the forest to forage for ingredients. This is how people go missing and die. And sure enough, he did roll a random encounter while he was out, and he ended up rolling. I started using OSE random encounter tables, because I've been using it for my solo, and I think it's mostly good. It was a little weird this session, because he ended up rolling for 2 unusual encounters. So this first one, when he was on his own, he encountered a were-tiger. And I was like, what am I going to do with a were-tiger? And I don't want to just have him ravaged by a were-tiger and call it a day, so I decided to make it a little bit more interesting for him, and he kind of saw it from like 100 feet away, and it was clearly like sleeping by the banks of a river or something. I don't know if that's something a were-tiger would do, but no one called me out on it, and that's the most important thing when DMing, is if you don't get called out on something. So yeah, he sees this were-tiger, and he rolls like his arcane lore, and I say a little bit about what it is. And he's really not sure what to do about it, but he at least recognizes that it is potentially a very strong threat. So he decides to just back away. And he also says that he's going to use some strong-smelling herbs that he found to cover his scent in case it tries to track him. Because I had mentioned that, like, you know, they're sometimes used in some places in the world as, like, trackers and stuff. So, you know, I'll give him props for thinking of that. It wouldn't have really mattered because it was sleeping, and I wouldn't be that quite dickish to be like, oh, you didn't cover your scent, you motherfucker. But, you know, it's that sort of creative thinking that is encouraged. And then so one of them went off hunting, one of them went off foraging, and then two of them just stayed at the camp to look over the villagers that they were escorting. And so I had them roll for random encounter as well during that time period, because I thought it's kind of an interesting situation. It's two sort of armed individuals escorting 7 beaten, whipped, starving peasants. Kind of interesting what could occur from a random encounter there. And so I ended up rolling an encounter. They ended up rolling for a high-level magic user. Was the random encounter, because they're in kind of a settled area. They're on a road, so, you know, like, it's decently likely they encounter other humans or other people. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with a high-level magic user? And I probably should have just done some more rolling rather than try to come up with something based off of that. I should have done a little bit more reaction roll, or like an activity roll, something of why this guy is on his own, walking down the road, where he's going, who is he, blah, blah, blah. But I like to keep things moving pretty brisk, so it's just generally sort of the first thought that comes into my head. And I was like, okay, I was reminded of a little sort of bit of lore I read a long time ago for D&D. And that's that the god Bahamut, so like the god of dragons and stuff, he often likes to wander the world in the guise of an old man that has 7 little birds sort of following him. And I was like, okay, none of these people are going to know that. They're not going to know anything about that. And they're just going to see this old man with his 7 little birds. And he's going to, you know, I didn't want to really delve too much into Bahamut's mentality or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure Bahamut's like a good deity, right? Yeah, and he's a deity of good dragons and stuff, so he's a really good guy. So, you know, he comes across this group, 2 armed individuals escorting 7 clearly like slaves. And so, you know, he stops and sort of makes a comment about slavers, you know. And so Lego had to kind of explain everything and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, roll charisma, you know, roll persuasion. And he failed, and he's like, oh, fuck, oh, shit. So he actually used his reroll to make sure he succeeds on that. Because he was, Lego especially was like unsure of this guy. And yeah, anytime you encounter an old man wandering a road by himself, probably be wary, because if he's not a god, he's at least like a high-level wizard or something. So, yeah, I mean, Lego was right to be cautious. And so, you know, he convinced... I'm sure fucking Bahamut probably already knew the truth or anything, but if he didn't, then Lego convinced him they were honorable and doing an honorable thing here. And so he went on his way. And I could have had some other... You know, he threw them a magic coin or something. I don't know. I could have done something, but I don't know. It was really more of like, you better not fuck this up kind of moment than anything else. And then afterwards, to sort of, you know, it's probably not good DM form, but I think they appreciate when I do it. And I sort of explain, you know, that was actually Bahamut. You know, that was the god of dragons in disguise. Lego was very relieved that he used his reroll to convince him that they were doing a good thing. Because, yeah, I mean, pissing off Bahamut could have smoten you. You know, just fun little things that I wouldn't really ever do for, like, if I was DMing for, like, my normal group of friends that have much more D&D experience and knowledge and stuff. But for this group, you can get away with a lot of stuff. So they continued on, and they did make it to town, and they, again, pretty easily convinced the guards that they were trying to get these guys to like shelters, you know, the church or something, and because they mentioned that they came from Ilmire, and Ilmire obviously has a reputation around those parts of being a pretty shady place. So it's like, yeah, okay. So they took him to the local church of Argona, and they gave a pretty hefty donation to the church so that they would look after these people and get them back on their feet and everything. And at that point, I was like, okay, quest done. And I gave them 7 XP each because they saved 7 people. And I figure that's more than enough XP. And they were pretty pleased. And 2 of them hit level 3. So they started picking their unique features. And I thought, you know, the unique feature, you're going to pick something pretty fantastical, pretty unique, pretty exciting. They ended up picking pretty mundane stuff. I think my mom basically just picked +1 AC with heavy armor. And then I don't know if Lego picked yet, but I think he was leaning towards extra spell slots. But he might switch to Paladin, because I made a custom Paladin class. And he didn't think that I would allow him to just switch classes like that, but I don't really have a huge problem with it. I mean, I wouldn't allow it at any given moment, but it is a very similar class, so it's not like he's going from fighter to magic user suddenly. It's a pretty similar class, and there are drawbacks. He is losing cleric spells. He's losing divine spells, so he is actually losing like healing to switch to paladin to be a bit more martial. So I'm fine with that swap if he wants to do it, especially because I kind of made the class with him in mind. So in town they did a bunch of shopping then, because they had gotten a bunch of money out of the encampment there, and so they did a bunch of shopping, and they were all complaining, all bitching about their carrying capacity, and they're all running out of slots, and they can't carry anything, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, this is why most people hire a porter, you know, they hire someone to carry their shit. And so they wanted to know how much it costs, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, that depends on what level of porter you hire, because hiring a level 3 fighter to carry your shit is obviously more expensive than some peasant. And then it also depends on, is this guy going to be going into dungeons with you or going into dangerous locations with you? And they all said that he didn't have to, you know, because then if he goes into a dungeon, he gets a half share of the treasure and a half share of XP, because he can actually level up because he is going into dangerous situations. So he's gaining experience in sort of witnessing and being somewhat a part of dangerous situations, you know, because like, you know, he sees them like handle a trap or something, or he watches combat, so he slowly accumulates experience, and he might eventually become like a level whatever fighter if he keeps living and keeps with the party. But the biggest problem obviously is players having to give up a half share of treasure. So they didn't want him going into the dungeon with him, and I'm like, well, you could just buy like a donkey, you know, if you just something to carry their shit and go with them. And they were much more on board with that. So they bought a donkey for 10 gold. And donkeys are pretty good. I'm using axe rules for a lot of these things, obviously. So donkeys move as quickly as a human does. And they can carry 15 slots of gear, which is pretty good. And they can go into dungeons with you. So they're kind of a really good porter. Unless you're looking... Now, the thing is, the donkey will always be a donkey. A porter, or a torchbearer, will theoretically eventually become, like, a fighter that you could give a bow to and actually have him, like, assist in combat and stuff, while carrying your shit. And that has value. And hopefully eventually they see the value of, like, having henchmen and having hirelings and stuff. Like having a group of like 6 archers in the back just pelting shit. Because if they had like 4 archers, if they hired 4 archers to go with them, they could pretty easily take out that bandit encampment, I think. And they certainly had the money to do so. I probably should have mentioned this as a possibility because I'm sure none of them thought of it. It is a little annoying that Ilmayer is like 2 days away. So that's 2 days that you kind of have to haul them over there. But it's not really that big of a deal. And there is safety in numbers, always. But they bought a donkey and they were very pleased with it. They set out from the city with their donkey back to Ilmayer. And they rolled a random encounter with a few giant hawks. And I rolled a reaction roll, and it was pretty positive. So the giant hawks were just kind of curious, and were just circling around up ahead. But this freaked them the fuck out, man. They were really like, oh shit, oh god. Mostly because one of the characters is a halfling. And they were all very like, oh, those hawks are going to pick you up, boy. Especially because I remarked that the OSE monster block for the giant hawks specifically says they can carry up to halfling-sized prey. So they were like, oh god, he's gonna grab the halfling. So they all bolted for like the nearby forest, the nearby woods. And again, the giant hawks were just kind of curious, so they kind of followed, and they were still just circling overhead. And they were still freaked out, like, okay, fucking hawks. So they actually stepped out of the forest, and they started like yelling at the giant hawks for them to go away, and they like grabbed rocks and stuff. They didn't throw the rocks, but they grabbed the rocks. And I think I had the halfling, because she was one of the ones that was like grabbing a rock and like, get out of here, hawks, and yelling at him. I'm like, okay, roll, you know, an animal lore skill with your charisma to see if you intimidate them enough to fly away, and she did not. She failed pretty spectacularly. So I'm like, okay, one of the hawks immediately is just gonna dive bomb you. And so it like latched onto her face, and she took some damage. And they started hurting it, but it had quite a bit of health, so it actually started to lift her off the ground, and it was like 10 feet up. But Lego used his magic horn that he just got that allows you to knock it to the ground. So it knocks it to the ground, and they quickly just like cut off its head. And they saved the halfling. And I decided the other two were just gonna fly away, and I gave them an XP for killing the giant hawk. Again, you know, just a fun little random encounter. That, again, all I rolled was just giant hawks, and I rolled that they were just going to circle ahead. I had no idea what they were going to do, and they could have just been like, okay, that's cool. And they kept going, and that was the end of it. But no, you know, players, you can always leave it to them to make a very mundane encounter much more interesting. So they kept going, and they camped for the night, so they're about halfway to Ilmayer. They camped for the night near some forests, near some woods. And I'm like, okay, roll random encounter, and they rolled a random encounter, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll roll on the forest table, because they're next to a forest. And my nephew again rolled for an unusual encounter, and then he rolled specifically for a basilisk, and I'm like, oh my god, should I just ignore this result? No, this is the whole point of OSR, is you play it as it rolls, and just roll with it. So I'm like, okay, let me roll, and I roll its reaction roll, and I got like a 3, so it's just like immediately hostile and violent. Like, okay, great, let's see how this goes. It's like, okay, obviously they can't really fight it. They're not going to fight it. That'll be a TPK. So I have to telegraph this danger as much as I possibly can. I have to really lay it on thick that this is like, oh god, you should get away from this. So the person on watch was my mom, and she immediately woke up everybody because now she learned her lesson from the last time she was on watch. And they don't see it because it's dark, it's in the forest, you know, they can't see it, but they hear it. They hear something big moving through the trees and like pushing like bushes aside, pushing like trees aside. Like, whatever this is, it's big. And as it gets closer, I'm like, okay, you actually kind of, like, feel its footsteps sort of thumping towards you. And still, they just, like, Lego's just like slowly putting on his chainmail armor, and they're like, okay, well, can I see what it is? You know what? And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, what else can I do? What else can I do other than just point blank tell them, like, please run. We don't want this to happen. It's like, okay. So then I was really generous. Because I was like, okay, I'm going to give my mom, who's like furthest up front, I'm going to give her a luck roll based on her luck. To see if she sees this basilisk before it sees her. She fails. Like, okay, fine. So it sees her first. I probably should have done perception more than anything, but I was like, it's coming towards them. It knows they're there. It's not being stealthy at all. So it's really just a matter of luck, much like the door opening. I could have done perception, but yeah, I was already being pretty generous here. So I'm like, okay, it looks at her. It's going to use its gaze attack right away to try and turn her to stone. So I'm like, okay, roll a luck constitution. She fails. I think she might have re-rolled this or re-rolled the first one. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, she failed. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is the game, you know. So she immediately turns to stone. And the other three see now that it's a basilisk. It's like 14 feet long. It's got 8 legs. It's huge. And I explain. I don't even have them roll. I'm just like, I'm gonna just fucking tell you, this is a basilisk. It's massive. It turns things to statues and then eats the stone, and it's one of the most feared creatures around. And so my nephew immediately was like, I'm out of here. I'm running. I'm running. Blah, blah, I'm running. Lego became his usual very defeatist. Anytime he encounters anything that just seems too tough, he's just like, well, I guess we're dead. I guess I'll just fight you. We're dead. I'll get a new character. And, you know, this is Lego. This is how Lego has always been since I was born and met him. He said, you know, he serves the god Graxus, you know, the god of iron, who demands that you find worthy combat and blah, and you face down challenges and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, oh yeah, I skipped a step. When they were leaving the bandit encampment, right as they were about to leave with all the villagers, they did actually see the leader of the camp sort of walking across the camp by himself. And I was like, man, this is really, I'm feeding this to them on a platter, that they could just pick off the leader by himself at night. This is a perfect opportunity. They could easily just lure him over with some sound, or have the door to the captive place be open, or, you know, something to just draw him over, and then they jump him and he's dead. And Lego did, I think, tease the idea of like jumping on top of him from a height and just like clobbering him. But in the end, they all just left. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to pull this Graxus philosophy now, you already broke that when you didn't fight the leader by himself in the camp. So don't give me that shit. And he accepted that was true. And I'm like, you know, the whole thing of being like a paladin and stuff is not to be lawful stupid. You know, you don't just... I mean, I know I played Ovum many times, who very much was lawful stupid, but somehow I pulled it off most of the time. And I do have good stories, like when I fought a Kraken one-on-one at like level 3 or something, and it was an incredible combat that I of course died. But it was like, that was a death I felt I earned, a glorious death. And it's like, I mean, if you want that, this doesn't sound like the attitude of someone that's like, yes, I want a glorious death against this basilisk. But like, no, it's just like, I'm gonna die, so whatever. I guess I'll fight it because my god wants me to fight it. Come on. So Tales of Aragosa has the party retreat feature, where if the whole group decides that they want to retreat at the start of a round of combat, they can choose to do so. And they have to make luck rolls, but they can carry away any incapacitated allies with them. And so 2 of the 3 had to succeed on a luck roll. Lego succeeded, my aunt failed, and then my nephew failed, but he re-rolled. I don't know Actually, I have no idea if you're allowed to use a reroll on those, but I think so. So he rerolled and he succeeded. So they got out of there. They hightailed it out with the statue of my mom, and they ran back to town, and they went to the church to have it cured. And I'm like, I don't know what it costs. I don't know what Stone to Flesh costs. And I was trying to find a spell in Axe real quick, but it's not called Stone to Flesh. And I don't know. Actually, I don't even know if it's called in D&D. What do they cast for something like that? Is it Greater Restoration? Yeah, I think it's Greater Restoration. So this site suggests, I guess, the Tyranny of Dragons playtest player guide had a table of costs and suggested 450 gold for Greater Restoration. This says... This says 500 gold per spell level. This says 200 gold per spell level. Obviously, quite a bit. And I'm not quite sure what the spell is. I guess it should be some sort of restoration. Or there is the... No. Axe obviously renames a lot of stuff. So I'd have to go through all these. There is restore life and limb, but that's like restore, revive or resurrection. So I don't know what it is. There is a spell, Petrification, and you can cast the reverse of it, Depetrification, but that's a level 6 arcane spell, so I imagine there's a divine spell that's slightly lower level. I think the point is, no matter what, I would have to have charged more than I did. But the thing is, I didn't want her to have to make a new character. Just because of that, because that was a really unfair sort of encounter. I telegraphed the shit out of it. There probably should be a punishment, and there was, but yeah, I mean, it was rough. I mean, what are the odds a fucking basilisk is like a day away from the big city in the forest? Seems kind of unlikely, but yeah. So. No matter what, obviously I would have had to have... I should have charged more than I did, but they don't have that much money. So I wanted her back in the game. I could have had the church, ask them to do some sort of holy quest in return. And they could have... Yeah, actually I should have done that. That would have been much smarter. I was like, okay, they'll do this for free. They'll restore her back to flesh. But in return, you have to go on this holy quest. Otherwise, you'll be cursed or something, something like that. And that I could have done something tying into a dungeon in Evils of Ilmire. Because there's a lot of dungeons in Evils of Ilmire, and I doubt they're going to get to all of them. But if I force them to go there, especially if I set a time limit, if you don't do this within 2 weeks' time, you will be cursed by our god, or some bullshit like that. It's either that or you cannot afford this. In hindsight, that would have been much smarter, but you don't think of these things often in the heat of the moment. So I was just like, okay, I want her back in the game, and I can't. They don't have that much monies, but I just want it to be a significant penalty. So I charged 200 gold, and that was most of the rest of their gold, and they paid it, and so okay, it worked out. And after the session was over, I was like, yeah, if you hear something or feel something stomping towards you at night, don't stand next to your campfire in the light and just watch. Like, get to a dark area nearby and see what approaches. Like, and they all agreed that that's much smarter. Anyways. So that's where we ended it for the night. They're getting ready to go back to Ilmire finally, and hopefully they don't run into too many other things. At this point, they can't really afford, I think, to hire anybody to help out. I don't know. I don't know the exact gold total, but it's low. So, yeah, you know, perhaps my random encounters are a little too harsh, but this is OSR shit. I'm using OSE tables, you know. There is, anytime you're near a forest or in a forest, there is a chance you will encounter a basilisk. So, you know. Alright. I think I've talked long enough. So, this channel, more solo role manging, more Dawn of War, more Archipelago and Two Brothers Play, exploring series, SCP-8947 from DJ Cactus, an hour and 51 minutes long. Good stuff. But for now, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.